G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of DNA Reviews, where we sit and review the the series Andor episode by episode, which is particularly cool. What's not particularly cool at the moment is the weather. The weather's actually warming up now, even though some parts of the state is like raining like mad. But we're kind of hoping that everybody's having a good time out there. Mr. Aaron, how you plodding along, old son?
I'm going well. It has been a weird day today. It's bright and sunny out and it's pouring of rain. Who knows what's happening out there?
Yeah, exactly right. Now, for those who are, you won't know this, everybody out there, Aaron's using a new computer tonight. So if anybody can hear problems with Aaron's sound, can they please just say so right now? If he's echoing or he's mucking around or if he even sounds better than usual, that would be absolutely outstanding. So that way we can try and have a bit of a play with it. But from my ears, his dulcet tones are dulceting away. So if everything's pretty good, then that is absolutely fantastic to hear. We've been following this series Andor for a couple of months now. It's hard to believe the time has flown, and we're now up to episode 9. Nobody's listening, which is actually quite important because in the end, it does come down to who listens to who, and it also says about how other characters are not listening to other characters as well. It's not necessarily to do with what happens in the prison, as we'll see later on. As always, we do have a spoiler alert. So for those who haven't seen the episode or don't want to be spoiled, then you may want to look away now. But otherwise, if you have seen it, because it did come out about 5 days ago, then sit back, relax, and enjoy our thoughts and views, Mr. Aaron. So what do you reckon?
Well, I thought it was another really interesting episode. I can't wait till we dissect this one because there's lots of cool stuff that happens. Lots of dialogue that you have to listen to see how it plays out later in the episode as well.
Yep, totally agree. So let's get started. Now, what I've done is I've always done previously is I've grouped things together just to make our lives easier because what they do, there's 3 different things going on at the same time. So instead of jumping around all over the place, I've just put most of them together to make a bit more of a logical flow. Okay, so if you know the episode really well and go, hang on, there's a bit missing there. It's just that we'll get back to it later on. We kick things off. We've got all the interrogation sequence, and of course, the first thing that happens is Deborah does the neck cracking thing. And even though the series is absolutely spectacular, I thought this was one of the dumbest things they could have done. It's straight out of the Matrix. The old. I don't know why they did that. I thought it's an absolutely tiny blemish. It's like a flea on an elephant's bum. Compared to the rest of the show, but I couldn't work out why they did that. But what do you reckon, Mr. Aaron? Do you reckon that was something they put in as an afterthought?
I thought that she's so dedicated and works so hard, she's uptight, and it's just how uptight she is. I didn't really think it was a bad blemish or anything. It didn't add anything either. So
no, it didn't. Yeah. But it was the first thing that comes up. You see, and you go, and you go, oh, seriously? Next thing will be the knuckles and all the rest of it. I thought, oh, really? And it didn't start off on a high note, but then it all sort of went from there. And of course, we're talking about Bix's interrogation, right? Now, of course, last week we discussed about this. We said, what exactly are they going to do? And we weren't entirely sure. And of course, this is a long time where it's all about Mr. Gorst. Dr. Gorst and his friendly wave. And I like the fact that Dedra said that she's very excited about his interview system. What do you reckon about this particular dude? We're going to see a bit more of him in a couple of slides' time, but what do you reckon? He gives the nice little friendly wave. It's not your average big-ass dude with a friggin' axe or something, is he?
He's a friendly, positive guy, I thought, to begin with. That makes it even more scary because they're the ones that are the most psychotic.
Well, it's true. It's a very good point because typically interrogators in a lot of movies and TV shows, either they're big, huge, burly guys with friggin' chainsaws or whatever, or they're skinny, weedy dudes who just look really, really shifty. And then you go, oh, yeah, clearly, you've got a bit of a couple of screws loose. But the way this dude presents himself, Dr. Gorst, you know, he's a relatively normal dude until he starts talking about the things that he does. Now, this entire sequence is interesting because one of the things about a series that goes for such a long time, it's easy to forget what's happened in the previous episodes. So we have to have a bit of exposition, right? And for those who lost track of everything that was going on, Salman Pack, I think his name is, as we've discovered, is the one who actually recruited Bix and provided the radio, which you used to see in the tunnel. And it turned out, though, which I didn't know, that Salman himself was actually recruited by a woman. And I was wondering if it was Vel or Clea. I'm going to take a stab. It's going to be one of those two. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that at all, but I thought it was interesting that this was highlighted and Dedra made a point of discussing this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it'll probably be Val. I was thinking either her or Mon Mothma, but I think she is too distant and out of the, operations of what's actually happening for her own safety for it to be her. So I think you're probably right. I don't think it'll be Claire, but you never know.
Well, that's it. I mean, a few episodes ago, we would have said, nah, definitely not Clay, but she's now, because that's Luthen's assistant in the shop. And you can see she has a much bigger role in the rebellion than we first thought. And
Yeah,
of course, Vel has been traveling all around the countryside effectively. And you don't know what's going on around the place, but I would take a stab. I agree with you. I think of the two, it would be Vel, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. And of course, what this has been highlighted is the fact that the entire rebel network has been created, but nobody actually knows at the lower end of the food chain as to what's going on. So Bix is just one part of a tiny piece of the machinery. So she gets like recruited by Luthen, right? So she knows who Luthen is. She's probably not even aware that Salmon was recruited potentially by Val. And there's all this stuff going on everywhere. And what it comes down to is it means that everybody's expendable. So
yeah.
ultimately, if Bix drops off or gets captured, the rest of the crew don't really care. It's not like there's one big harmonious group. And I found that to be really interesting. So even Bix wasn't aware of just how big this network was. And of course, all this would be news to her. So it'd be an absolute shock to the system. So I thought this was really well covered off.
Well, I thought it was good too, and it's the way that I guess, the fledgling rebellion protects itself. If no one has any of the information on any of the other cells, then no one can betray each other. There's just one contact, basically.
Yeah, it does mirror a lot of what happens in real life with, I don't want to use the word terrorist groups, but we'll go with that anyway. How they have different, there's no one crowd, one person or one group controlling it all. They all do their own things individually. For that
Yeah,
reason, you lose one cell, it doesn't impact anybody else. So remember, as we've said, especially in this episode, you've got to look at everything from two perspectives, depending on whose side of the fence you're sitting on. But it's interesting because we get to see both sides, which I think is kind of cool. Now,
yeah,
we were discussing as to how Bix would be questioned. And I guess we've kind of figured out from the galaxy far, far away, physical beatings don't actually occur. It's got to be some other technique because we haven't seen that in any of the Star Wars shows, even including the sequel trilogy. So it would seem that, they weren't going to do anything physical. So whatever they did was going to be impacting her mentally and emotionally. And of course, Dedra's nasty side comes to the fore when she said she was going to leave her, as in Bix, to Dr. Grost, and Dedra leaves the room. I thought, well, okay, well, it's just going to be the two of them. But then Dedra comes back. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So remembering that from her perspective, Bix is a pain in the ass. It's like, mate, you've got all this information. You've been thieving them from everybody. We've lost millions of credits out of the Aldani heist. We want to know what's going on. So clearly she's come back and is just like not in the mood to be mucked around with. And I thought that was actually kind of cool because, it would be an interesting scenario if it was a male interrogating a female. Some people go, oh, it's blatant sexism and all sort of shit. But when it's one female against another, I think that was actually kind of cool. And it sort of turns that mindset on its head. So people can't go, oh, yeah, it's a bit favoring one over the other. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
yeah. Absolutely. I thought it was a fascinating scene, the whole thing with the dynamics of the two of them, and then the Doctor and everything. And it goes into one of the things I really like about this show, kind of the nature of evil and how far someone would go to get something. Because I thought Deidre was one of these people that's so committed to the security of the Empire. She's doing it because she thinks she's doing it because the Empire are good, and then she's trying to secure the galaxy. But when you go forward into this and you see she enjoys what's happening and also what they do, and where I guess we're going to talk about it more, but what they actually do to her and where those sounds came from, there's no way to justify any of that in the good ledger. You are in the we are bad people doing bad things here, and they know it. So I do wonder, when you say we're doing all this for the good of security of the Empire, hang on a second, you're being totally evil and amoral, to get the information that you need.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's crossing a few borders, a few lines. Some of it emulates what happens in real life. Some of it is clearly, obviously, in the galaxy far, far away. And yeah, it's the ends justifying the means, and there's could be a lot of discussion about that. I mean, in real life, you'd have scenarios where, okay, the crowd over there have done horrible things to get us these results, but I didn't physically do it, so I'm just going to play ignorant, put the head in the sand, and just say someone else's problem, right? I'm aware of it, but I didn't do it, so my conscience is clear, even though I'm aware that something happened. And I do wonder if it's a similar thing in this instance. So, of course, that brings us up to what happened here. So do old Dr. Grost, and he explains the whole thing about how they got the sounds from the Dizonites, dying children. It's like, oh, that's a bit of a hard one to sort of cope with, isn't it? Eh? And they found by accident that their cries cause distress in people. Now, I'm assuming that this interrogation technique is mainly for humans. It wouldn't work on aliens, but we don't see a lot of aliens in the show anyway. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting one. They could have easily said, oh, it was the adults or the grannies or whatever, but I know it's the kids, and go, oh, that's going to upset a few people. So, yes.
Well, I thought, as I was saying, that's pretty cool, because I mean, in a bad way, I think it's pretty cool what they're doing with showing the Empire are out to get the information, and they'll do absolutely anything to do it. And that shows how committed they are to the cause. It does come into that thing when they're bragging about killing, that was a school, that was kids. They are evil people. There's no way they can justify that as for it's the greater good.
Totally agree with you. Now, it's interesting to note, be aware though, I'm talking about everybody out there. So when the Empire moved into the planet of the, I forgot what it's called, the Desonite, whatever, and they wanted to kill the population off because they needed the space, it all happened by accident. So it just turned out, they didn't deliberately go in there saying, we're going to kill everybody so we can get the sound that they make. It just occurred. And remember, it's actually highlighted in the episode, there were people listening to the everything going on to prove that it was actually happening, and they discovered by an accident that the sound makes people go a bit Scooby-Doo. So from Gross' point of view, what he's done is got the sound modified a little bit to use it as an interview technique, but he himself didn't do it. So I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it's interesting to see how they got it. It's not like they deliberately did it and then, oh, what are the chances? It just happened. And I thought, yeah, it's an interesting one.
How they got it, they said they were building a refueling center, and the local population put up a resistance.
They did.
And so they wiped them out. But
That's
they
right.
recorded it as proof of mission. So the Empire are actually wanting recordings of the entire population getting wiped out to prove that orders are being followed. And I thought that was very fascinating, the dynamics of the Empire. And, there must be some captains who go, we're not wiping out kids. And they go, we're recording everything to make sure. It's kind of like in The Force Awakens, where they have the guns and they can see if the guns have been discharged, because if you're not following orders and you're not shooting, they go, well, you're going in for a psych evaluation because you're not obeying the Emperor.
Which is true. And of course, that then brings up the whole thing of the anti-alien mindset too. And of course, you can relate that to real life history here. But say, okay, humans come in, they see the aliens, they go, you know what, they're sentient, because they mentioned, making a point of saying that. But, as far as we're concerned, they don't exist, and and the commanders are given free will to kill them off it as they want, and they just so happen to have the sounds that they can use. And you are right. So the guys are actually listening on headphones to saying, yep, they're all dying. It's not good. I know, it's very interesting. I thought, if you're going to do an interrogation sequence and you got to say use a technique, what would you use? And I thought this was a very interesting one. The sound of dying alien children. It's like, yeah, righto. That's going to probably turn a few people off. So he pulls out what looks like a VR gaming headset. I've got to sit there, sort of straight out of what we have today, virtual reality, which I thought was kind of cool. And when it goes on, do you love the fact that all the music, everything just stopped, and it was just Bix's breathing? That was ingenious from a sound design perspective, yeah?
Yeah, like I've said, just about every episode, the way these episodes are put together are a cut above everything else I think we've seen. From a storytelling point of view, the way of moving the story forward through all the different mediums of television, through sound, through the visuals, and through everything, it's been pretty spot on for me.
So it's interesting. We don't get to hear the noise, which is kind of cool. So we're just seeing what Bix is going through. And of course, the camera goes around to the front of her. And of course, you're thinking, yeah, that's just going to leave a mark. And we just have to feel what she's feeling based on her reaction. I thought that's a very interesting way of doing it. So all power to them. And as Grost said, there's no physical intimidation whatsoever. They tie her down for her own benefit. And far out. And then, of course, just jumping a little bit, once it's going on, there's like the whole thing of when the door closes and when the boots walk away, they do an exact copy of what they see in A New Hope with Leia. I thought it was very clever. And the camera goes to the floor, and then as it comes back up again, the dude's walking away down the corridor. I thought that was kind of groovy.
Well, I think what's interesting, I think they did that to remind everyone that we're in the Star Wars universe still, because if you look at the chair she's sitting in, there's another famous torture scene in a James Bond movie
Yeah,
Casino
yeah,
Royale, where he's sitting in the chair with no bottom and he gets
yeah,
tortured as well. And when they did that with the chair, I'm like, I wonder if they're saying, well, this is something that's possible. It is. It's obviously not, but it's one of those things that it did echo some of those
yeah.
scenes in Casino Royale as well. So I thought this is pretty heavy for a Star Wars show.
Yeah. Christy said, we don't want to hear it because Disney doesn't want to make us even more loopier. I mean, clearly it's intentional because they don't want to have a sound and people go, well, it doesn't do anything for me and all this sort of no. You don't need to hear it. You just need to know that it has an impact on people. And clearly it's a very significant one. And as noted, it was going to happen no matter what, right? I like how Bix says, you're not going to believe me whatever I say. And Dedra says, yep, completely agree with you. And of course, you do wonder what the long-term psychological implications are going to be. Now, we do see Bix a bit later on in the cell by herself. Now, Selman, it didn't end well for him. And as mentioned, the three dudes who originally listened to the recording, they all went a bit radio rental. So you do wonder. So as this series has progressed, you think of all the people who started off okay in their lives, and it's all gone completely pear-shaped. So Bix has had this done to her. You remember Tim got killed. Her Marva is crook as a dog, and it's just everything. Cassian's had to run off because he's obviously in prison at the moment. Everything's just gone completely down the gurgler big time from Furix from like 2 months ago. It's all one big happy group. So, mate,
I find it interesting that at this time in the Empire, getting information truthfully out of people is obviously a big deal because we've got this in this episode, and as we discussed last episode, the Boogalat or whatever, which
Ball Gullet is what Saul Guerrero uses. Yeah.
Which again, they said it can turn your Looney Tunes kind of thing, and then you've got the whole A New Hope, which isn't set too long after this now, where you've got mind probes. And in the original scripts for Star Wars, they talk about how they're conditioned to resist mind probes and stuff. I mean, that's not in it, so I guess it's not canon. But it is one of those things, if you're in for security of the galaxy and you're looking for all these conspiracies, getting the truth out of people is a very important thing.
Well, it's a good point. And this brings me to this bit here, right? So is Dedra classed as evil or just someone who wants information? And what I put down there, what we see here occurs in the real world by the good guys. And what I thought of, and I don't want to get into this long discussion, right? It's a bit controversial, is Guantanamo Bay, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the US kept hostages from Afghanistan, Iraq, and whatever else. And they were effectively off the grid and things happened there. So now we're seeing that, as you mentioned a moment ago, like Saul Guerrero and his partisans are classed technically as the good guys, inverted commas, using unsavory and inhumane techniques, and Dedra's effectively doing the same thing. So you are right; they're two sides of the same coin. And I looked at it from the point of view of saying, okay, is her character actually evil, or because you've got to remember from her perspective, Bix is the bad guy, right? Yeah. She is the thief, right? She's involved in all these conspiracies around to bring down the government. So if you keep it all very, very simplistic, you can say, well, there's a terrorist organization trying to destroy the government. And that's what Star Wars is all about. And you do wonder, it's like, okay, is Dedra evil? Even though I agree with you, she knows the history of where the sound device thing came from.
Yeah.
So it's the one thing that works on this show, as we've said before, it doesn't paint the bad guys as one side and the good guys as the other side. There's a lot of meshing in between. And I reckon that's really groovy.
I don't think she is evil because she don't get anything out of it. If she was doing something and she knew it was going to get her big promotions or money or something like that, but she's committed to the cause and she's willing to push it for the security of the Empire. So I actually liked her character more after this episode. I really love her character anyway, but I thought this is great character building and it shows her commitment. So I thought this was good.
And I think you're on the right track on that one too, because you're right. She's just not like strangling dudes left, right, and center and just beating them all up and laughing at it. She just wants information, no mucking around. She's a go getter, effectively, even if the means are a tad unsavory. But it is for the greater good. And it is, don't go on.
Yeah, when I say I don't think she's evil, I don't think she thinks she's evil. We looking at it can go, yeah, you're on the wrong side. But I think she's just committed. I don't think she's deliberately doing it because she enjoys it or anything. It's the job she's getting done.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So very groovy. Now, as it turns out, when we walk out the door, so Tigo wants to hang Selman, right, as a warning to others. And there's an interesting point coming up here. And Dedra doesn't care either way, which makes sense because from her perspective, she's more interested in knowing getting the information out of Bix, right? I thought, okay, so Tigo, he's a happy camper. He would be classed, in inverted commas, as an evil dude, but without realizing it, he's going to be echoing the past because, ironically, as mentioned there, if he hangs Salmon, right, as he wants to do, and that's Salmon on the left in the middle picture, for those who've forgotten who he was, it's going to emulate exactly what happened to Cassian and Clem, because with Clem, they hung him up. And look what happened to Cassian. He turned into a complete anti-imperial sort of dude and has taken up arms and thieving, and later on he becomes part of the alliance. So clearly his son, as in Salman's son, Wilman, will do exactly the same thing. So the whole thing of it's going to be a warning doesn't work. And I don't know if you picked up on that, but I did. It's like, hang on, one is actually replicating and emulating the other. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it absolutely doesn't work, and it goes into a lot of the story themes, but it goes into Obi-Wan, where they strung up the Jedi as a warning, and it actually brought Obi-Wan back because it motivated him. And the other thing where it goes into is it plays into Luthen's hands, because he said, we need to push this so the Empire start doing nastier things, because that's the only thing that's going to wake the people up. So I thought, this is fantastic. All these little things that are plot points through other episodes, they are knocking down like dominoes, and they're following up on them, which I absolutely love in drama series.
Yeah, and what it is doing is showing that the Empire, for the first time since Star Wars: A New Hope itself, and maybe The Empire Strikes Back, is a real credible threat, right? Yeah. All these other shows, whether it be like your Kenobis of the world or your Boba Fett, not Boba Fett's afterwards, Kenobis or your Rebels series, have shown the Empire to be a complete bunch of tools, right? And this show, they are a serious threat. You do not muck around with them, right? And I think it's fantastic that they've finally gone down this route. Chrissy said it's very real world, and that's intentional because they want the audience to relate to what's going on. The moment you start introducing fanciful or true science fiction related things, you go, well, I can't relate to it. It just looks pretty pictures. It doesn't mean anything. I can't get it. But when you can say, oh, hang on, this could actually happen here and is happening here, you feel a lot more for the characters, regardless of who it is. Tracy said, I think this is Dedra. I think she's excited by it all. She's now getting noticed. I tend to agree with you, dude, that she's just in a way of getting information. She wants it fast because, as she said, she gets bored. And clearly a lot of people are not going to spill their guts naturally. They're going to say, I'm just going to tell you all these lies. And the Selman guy, as she said, held out for no reason whatsoever. In the end, he just let it all go. So if it's a technique that works, regardless of what it does to the individual, maybe it's worth doing. Remember, she sees Bix, Salman, all those guys as the bad guys, right? And you can easily relate to it in our world too when you say, okay, we, the Western civilization, are the good guys, but somewhere over that side, they're the bad guys. And whatever happens to them, don't care. And just quickly before I get to you, Christy said it's one of the reasons why I'm not fond of the show. And I get it, Christy. I really, really do. So it is very, very not anti-Star Wars, but very much removed from what you would normally see in the galaxy far, far away. It's skirting some boundaries. I mean, the whole thing of, using the sound of dying kids is like, oh, sorry, dude, go for it.
So I do agree with what Tracy's saying as well, because that's one of the arcs that Deidre's had over this series, where the first couple of episodes, she puts her hand up and gets shouted down, or she says something, and it's almost like her career's on the line if it doesn't work out to be true. But where, 9 episodes in, and now they're actually listening to her, and that would be rewarding for her.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's a job reward. I don't think that's, riches and power. I just think she gets a reward and maybe a buzz out of being right and being better than the other ones. So
it's the dog of the bone scenario. She's got it and she's running with it, and she's been given all the resources to find what's going on. You would. Most people would. They go, you know what? I'm on a mission. I'm in the zone effectively. And and she's coming across people saying, well, information. And she's trying to do this to find Luthen. So she has to do everything she can to try and track him down, or Axis, as they call him.
Yeah.
So that's what happened in that sequence there. We'll get back to Dedra and that later on. We're now going to jump over to Narkina 5, the prison thing. There's a lot going on here, right? So first things first, we see Olaf. He's having a hard day at the office. He's a bit of an old dude, as we've said before. Clearly, all this continual working is not going to end well for him. And we said a couple of episodes ago, if there's a weak link in the chain in this story, it'll be him. He's not going to last the distance, right? Notice that he's also got 40 days left. So that's a bit of an absolute classic trope to say, dude, you're not going to make it. Don't even bother thinking that you're going to get released. And, of course, Cassian at this point starts to show his leadership qualities by moving the team around, not taking credit for it, so they can continue working at the same time. So all this was kind of groovy. This is all leading up to what's going to be happening later on. And then Cassian has to go to the camp. We finally see the dunny. Funnily enough, they actually show it in a very, very quick flash. It's like, oh, there we go. We've actually not heard about the toilet. We've actually just seen it. And he's got this wall thing. So, and I couldn't work out one that's not really well concealed, but I couldn't work out what he was doing. And if anybody else knows what he's up to. So, what do you think, dude?
No, it was one of those things I wasn't sure if he was trying to communicate or just get an idea of what he could do, what his skills could do with what there was around. But I don't think that's paid off yet, has it?
No. Chrissy said he had 1 week until retirement, as in that's the classic quote. I mean, 40 shifts is still a month, so he's still got a long way to go. So, yes, it's not like he's leaving tomorrow. And I thought, yeah, dude, you're not going to make it 12 hours a day, unrelenting, just go, 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 go. Oh, yeah. And we find out later on what happens to the team who comes last. So, yeah, so with Cassian in the thing, yeah, he's got the panel open. He's soaring through the Duvalac. I'm not entirely sure what the deal is with that. But I mean, as it is, if he was on the can, he would have been in a bit of trouble because the alarms go off, program control or whatever it is. All the dudes got to stand with their hands on their heads. Imagine that you're in the middle of the biz. I was like, oh, dude, the worst possible timing. Luckily, he wasn't. He runs out with this other guy, and they're sussing out what's going on, and you can clearly see that Cassian and his mates are saying that there are gaps in the guarding system. Right?
Yeah.
And I like this because they're already planning an escape, and something has to happen, and we know why later on. So I thought this was kind of cool because even though I think Andy Serkis's character, Kino, I think it is, he wants everything to stay as is. These guys are already plotting and scheming to work out a way to break out. What do you reckon?
Well, I think the dynamics are amazing because obviously the Empire want a character exactly like Andy Serkis's character, who is one of the prisoners, who's one of them, but he's the one keeping them in line because he's almost like he's a stern fatherly figure. Is like, we'll get you through this, we'll get you out, we'll work it all. Don't fight the Empire, just do what you want. It comes across much stronger from someone who's a prisoner themselves than it would from the horrible commandant of the space station or whatever. So again, the dynamics of everyone here is fantastic.
Tracy said this is what prisoners do constantly: watch officers and look for weak links. And of course, as we've said before, Tracy's an actual prison officer. She would know this stuff. So it's interesting what happens here. So clearly Cassian and the guys are thinking about what they can do. They get stuck in the corridor and they're just left there, right?
Yeah.
And then the rumor thing starts going. Something like that is out of place. Something's not right. There's an issue. And of course, all the power goes out, right? And this is where the rumor mill starts. And they're hearing from all the hand signals elsewhere that something happened on level 2. Now, of course, a power outage implies a lot of power was needed somewhere else. And of course, we realize what that is later on. But imagine from this guy's perspective, they say something's happened where we don't know what. And of course, for them to communicate with the level across the way, and then they've got to communicate with the level across the way and get the actual information that they're after, that would be frustrating because you'd be going, well, I kind of know, but I kind of don't know. And as mentioned, good old Kino is doing everything he can to keep the status quo going with all the prisoners. So you can imagine why they would be all on edge because they're in a very, very vulnerable situation.
Yeah, well, we're going to find out soon. There's like a Bunnings barbecue on level 2, but it is one of those things where I find it interesting. He's trying to rumor control, even though they're getting signals. He's going, you can't tell that from signals. You can't communicate. He's really trying to dampen it down, and you can see some of them are really worried, and they say stand in position, and some of them don't, and he has to get them in line really fast. So you can tell they're anxious and they're frustrated. They don't know what's happening, and they're sick of the whole situation.
And what works is because we don't know as the audience what's happened either, right? The power's going out. The guys have just been left there. What's going on? Something happened on level 2. What happened on level 2, right? And I like the fact that we don't know. Daniel's made a point of saying Cassian trying to cut through the pipe to set off an alarm to help with this go. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe that was part of the thing, the old classic distraction technique. Cut through alarm. Beep, beep, beep. All the troops come in and they come in and take over. As they said, they're going to go in there, try and take one out, grab the bits and pieces off them. Maybe that was part of the thing, and maybe they'll get back to it later on because clearly after this episode, things are going to be accelerated pretty fast. Now, I like this. This was a good moment. They're in the cells. And Cassian is discussing escaping, right? Because Cassian is clearly a smart cookie, as we've discussed in previous episodes. He really knows what's going on. And Kino simply doesn't want a part of it. And it's interesting because Cassian says, have you ever thought of it? And, of course, Kino says, get those thoughts out of your head, right? And, of course, he rolls over and turns the light off and whatever. And as we discover later on, he has been thinking about it. But clearly he's been there so long, all that thought of escaping is just gone. He's in a privileged position. He's in charge of all the dudes. So long as they stand there with their hands on their heads and they sort of meet their quotas, the world is good. So prior to the whole PORD announcement coming out, in this case 2 months prior, it's probably from his perspective, everything was awesome. It was all good. He's just got to see out his 240 something shifts, and he can go tart ass to everybody, and it all just went to hell in a handbasket.
And Cassian keeps repeating over and over the reviews we get for our shows. There's nobody listening. There's nobody listening.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course, because this has been pointed out by some of our viewers before, right, about the whole thing with the droids. Humans are way quicker and easier and cheaper to do the work than droids. And of course, these guys are incarcerated; they're not there by choice. And I do like the fact that Kino's hearing the truth. He knows he's hearing it, but he won't accept it. And no one cares about them. And Cassian's right; no one's listening to them. They're all just going through the motions. And I thought that was quite good. But the idea of using droids, because even like we've seen with the Kenobi series, when it was like Kenobi and all the humans sort of chopping up the fish, and some people are asking, why do they use droids to do all that? And of course, we had seen the sand and the maintenance and all the rest of it. And of course, they would have cost money. Whereas prisoners like this are expendable. They just replace them. And
You've got
away we go.
You've got to remember as well, the guy who we've seen had 40 shifts to get out, but he's getting out soon himself as well. So the closer you get to the release date, the less you want to be talking about escape and rebellions and all this kind of thing. You just want everyone to behave, and you get to the end and then you leave, and then they can do whatever they want. So that's one of the things at the beginning when he obviously got there. Yes, you think about it, but he's worked his way to a position where it's easier for him now just to wait it out and he'll be free, he thinks.
Completely agreed. Collins asked, we'd be interesting to see if what Kino's crime was will be revealed. Probably not, but you do wonder what got them in there in the first place. And there's a whole sort of sub-story as to the individual people and their backstories. Now, I like this. This was really interesting. The imagery, you sort of don't realize, right? So this is one level, looking across that level over there, and you've got this level down there, and you've got that level down there, and it goes right around. That's just one building. Man, how many people stuck in this place? There must be tens of thousands of them. What do you reckon?
Probably, and the imagery reminds me a lot of Attack of the Clones, the Geonosius base, when the clones are walking through stuff, and I think that's echoed by how many of them there are on different levels. I do wonder, are the higher levels up ascending in number, or the further down they go, is it like level 1, 2, 3, 4? I couldn't really tell from, they were going level 2, I think, looking up, so I guess the lower down, the lower the number. I wasn't sure though.
No, I don't know, but what it comes down to, there's a lot of levels and a lot of rooms and a lot of people, and yeah, you're right. I mean, you could be on one side. So as Kino said, there's like stuff going on the other side of the building. They would never see that, never get there. I mean, you'd just be trapped in this one world in 3 rooms, effectively. The work room, the crew quarters, and where they have the showers. That's it. Imagine day after day after day, and you wouldn't even know what day it is. I mean,
no.
Oh, geez, that's not good at all. So yes. It looks like they don't want the prisoners to know where they are. Well, that's exactly right. And how many others there are, exactly right. You would have no idea. Aside from what you can see out the windows, you would think, well, maybe there's X amount. But yeah, you multiply that X amount of times around the shaft and then the other buildings as well. And of course, the numbers would have increased over the past couple of months because of the PORD directive. So yes, not good. So yeah, it really is the prison of lost hope, as has been brought out. Now, it took me a while to work out what was going on. So this is a shift change. This is the night shift guys, right?
Yep.
And of course, the rumor mill is kicking in. It all starts with "Have you heard?" Right? So they're all talking about what's been going on. And I do wonder, and this would be a similar thing to what happens on submarines, as far as I'm aware. During the day shift, do the night shift guys sleep in the day shift guys' bunks, and then it's vice versa? So these guys don't have their own quarters, just like our guys don't have their own quarters. They sort of hot swap, if you will. So you would think that is probably likely. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that, but I don't think the Empire would be too worried about trying to give everyone their own room and their own bed. It'd just be one shift, another shift kind of thing. Some of the imagery in this does remind me, again, we mentioned it, of THX as well. Sort of just the stark whites and sort of working 24 hours a day and having shifts, but instead of having, I guess the robots that you had in THX, you've got the prison guards here making sure everything happens. So there's a lot of good sci-fi imagery in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. So Even for the first time, Kino is having to listen to what's being said because he meets his opposite number, which is
Mm.
Zinska, who's the controller of the night shift, which I thought was kind of groovy. So they now know that something has happened, something is going on. And then, of course, Kino has to tell everybody there may be a rumor, it may be true, it may be not. But you'd be thinking, dude, I've only got 200 and something days left. I don't need all this crap now. But of course, it's all starting to build up. And of course, once of course, you can see from the prison officer's point of view, they don't want this information to get out because then there will be riots, regardless of the consequences. And at this point, we still don't know what's happened. It doesn't.
Yeah.
We don't get confirmation until later on. So imagine being in the scenario where you think we've heard this, but we've got no idea what is it. And of course, the power outage yesterday meant that something happened, but nobody knows what it is. And of course, from there, Kino is starting to crack. Right, for the first time, he's starting to lose it. And Cassian is the only one who keeps it all together. As he says, the less they think we know, the better.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really good sort of point because you can tell when the time comes, Cassian is going to be the one who's going to be leading the escape.
Well, I tell you what, that is 100% true with when we find out what happened. You do not want to be the one who spreads the rumor and you're right about it, do you?
No, exactly right. And as Daniel said, on some warships, they hot bunk, right? So that's what we said. So people get in, people get out. So it's likely that these guys do exactly the same thing. We finally find out, because it's a competitive nature inside the workroom, they're all competing against each other. Remember, the level's competing against itself, which is then competing against other levels, competing at other floors and probably other buildings. What happens when you lose? And I love this. It's like the poor bastards get the electrical treatment, right? And like one guy says, let's get it over and done with. And it's interesting because this shot is like on screen for like a second, right? And then you cut to the reactions of everybody else. And it's almost like the sound is worse than the image. But imagine that. You go, shit, we're last again. Oh, mate, that is bad. That is really, really bad.
I really did like, we didn't really talk about it, where they cut from Bix about to hear the sound to the drill whirring in this place. And I think it was a really good transition because it's from one diabolical situation to another bad situation. So there's not much light in this series so far.
Well, that's right. And of course, with the prisoners, get the team 2 or whatever it is, you'll get the electrocution. It's not like all the other guys go, oh, this is when we've had enough of this. We're going to go on strike and start rioting and smashing things. They just stand there and just watch and they just take it. And they just think I'm glad it's these guys copping it, not us, right? And it's like, oh, imagine you can't even begin to be in that situation. It's like, shit, we're running behind by one. What happens at the end? Oh, no, not good at all.
I'll tell you what, it is an interesting prisoner dynamic. Imagine you were stuck with someone that wasn't good and you were continually losing every single time just because of that one person. You wouldn't think that person would last very long, would you?
You would think probably what would happen, even though it would be very difficult in the bunks because there's 2 people per bunk, you'd find a way to chuck the dude you don't like out onto the red floor, cook them, and get rid of them. That's probably what would happen. And it probably has happened in this show because you're right, not everybody would be 100% efficient all the time. With that in mind, good old Olaf is getting worse, right? He's starting to lose it. He's starting to forget what's going on. You just know, oh, dude, your hours are numbered by a long shot. And, of course, in the end, down he goes. No med spikes, no med drinks, no Bacta. And he's had a stroke. God, it's the first time I've heard a mention of a stroke in the Star Wars universe. It's like good old-fashioned stroke, and he's out and done.
Yeah, I guess it just proves that, we like lightsabers and spaceship battles, but when you get down to the day-to-day workings, they deal with all the same problems we have to as well.
Yeah, I liked it. It wasn't some kind of alien disease or whatever. The guy had a hard one. And you can imagine, too, you're thinking, because they're saying, just fix him up. He's only got 40 shifts left. Sorry. Yeah. And they can't cover for him either, right? They need the 7 people working properly on the machinery. So
how sorry do you feel for the doctor who, a doctor is trying to help people and he's just saying, this is the best I can do. Like, it's actually better for him if he goes this way,
Yeah.
And when he's saying he's dead, I wasn't sure. I was thinking, do you know what? You could probably save this guy if you really wanted to, but he's so hooked in with what's going on and it's so hopeless. He's saying, do you know what? You'll be begging that you went this way when you find out what's happening.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you too. And there's a good chance that the doctor ends up putting a lot of people down for this reason. So not good. And Daniel's agreed, if you had one person who was a bit slow and not pulling their weight, you would try and find a way to knock them off, and that's what you would do. All right, so in the end, Olaf's passing is actually kind of handy for our heroes because they finally find out what happened about level 2. And it was all about the fact that someone got released from level 4 accidentally, whatever reason, put back on level 2 the next day, and the officers found out about it and killed everybody, right? Now, it's curious to see whether this was an administration error, because if you remember from last week's episode, the prison guards were all having problems trying to staff themselves. There were people missing everywhere, and they were just having issues getting things sorted out. And it wouldn't surprise me if the guard or the prisoner on level 4 is on his way out, gets stopped by somebody at level 2, and he's trying to say, I've got my pass to go. The officer says, well, I haven't been told about that. I'm going to chuck you in on level 2. And, of course, they realise, no, he's not meant to be there. Imagine, from their perspective, you can see what's happened. It's not like they've deliberately taken the guy out and chucked him in level 2. It's been done accidentally because we saw that there were procedural problems from the previous week. And, of course, once they found out, they've done that. And you can't have a guy saying, I just came from 4. I'm now on 2. I'm not supposed to be here. None of you guys are ever getting out. Then there would be riots. And in the end, they hit the switch and they kill everybody, electrocute them all. It's like, oh, dude.
Well, I think the thing is, they did say it was an administrative cock-up or something, and someone from
that was
level
last
4.
week. Yeah, because I think that was intentionally put in. Remember, Cassian turns up and they're saying, oh, we've got a bit of a problem. Somebody was meant to be somewhere else, and they balls this up. Remember, from a time frame perspective, that was a month ago, right, from this episode. So, sorry, keep going.
Also, in this episode, we haven't gone through it yet. What Mon Mothma's talking about the changes to the law comes into this as well, where she's the one who's talking about, well, now they have indefinite sentences and stuff like that. So I did have to watch it twice till I worked out what happened. And for those people who haven't got it all together, as far as I'm concerned, someone finished their time on level 2 and was sent to level... No. They would have finished on level 2 and then sent to level 4 to find out, oh, no one gets out of here. And when they're on level 4, they find out no one gets out of here, and they were accidentally sent back to level 2 and told everyone on level 2, once you get out, you don't get out. You get sent up to level 4 where it's like hard labor.
Yeah, that's not how I interpret it. He's supposed to come from 4 to get out, and they've stuck him on 2 by mistake. Simple as that. Otherwise, if he's going up and down, it wouldn't make sense. He came from 4. He's being released. He goes up to level 2. They said, no, you're going in here. He goes into level 2. They've realised the error. Kill everybody. That's how I interpret it.
Everyone on level 4 knows they're there for life, right? So on level 1 and 2, they think when they get out, they're going home. So they're not though, they're going to level 4. And when they go to level 4, they find out they're there for life kind of thing. So no one on level 1 and 2 thinks they're going up to level 4. So it'd have to be someone who knew they were going to be there for life, goes to level 4, then goes back to level 2 and goes, hey, we're not going anywhere. I just found out we stay here forever once we're released. And that's why then there's a riot or whatever on level 2 and they have to fry everyone.
Yeah, I worked on the view that once they killed everybody on level 2, and because we hear about it here, now everything's locked down. They're never going to let anybody go, because if word gets out that they killed all these prisoners on level 2, right, it's not going to go down well. So everybody's just trapped there. That's how I interpret it. So anybody's watching this, if they want to put their 5 cents in, we've obviously, Aaron and I have interpreted it differently. I've thought of it because I just watched it today for the second time for this thing. Either way, level 2 got fried and it wasn't well. So not good. William said, nerds, while we're analysing a show, that's why we're doing this, and you're the one watching us. So back at you, William. Very good. So with that in mind, the harsh reality setting in, right? So they're killing their prisoners, and good old Kino knows he is never getting out. They are stuffed. Tracy agrees with you. They're just recycling the prisoners. Okay, fair enough. So I looked at it. Sorry, I thought it was an administration error because they did cover off the fact that last week there were administrative problems. So it could be.
It was an administrative error. No one from level 4 who knows no one's going home is meant to go back to level 1 or 2, because what they say, there's not enough guards on level 1 or 2 to keep control. So they're all up on level 4, and then when something happens on level 2 because they find out they're not going home, they just have to kill them because there's not enough guards to look after it. And this is why I think Kino is now, okay, he realizes we're never getting out of here ever, because he thinks he's getting to the end of his sentence, and then they find out, oh, no, you don't go home. You just go up to another level and you're here for life.
Yeah. Either way, it is not good. And Tracy's still right, still an admin error, because as you can tell, because with all the influx of new prisoners, clearly the system's overworked. And yes, the last shot, yes, he does ask the question, Cassian, how many guards on the thing? And Kino answers it. So next week, it is all going to go down one way or another. And Intense stuff. It really was.
They needed what they needed is Michael Caine in this going, this is rumor control and shutting everything down.
Yeah. Straight out of Brazil. So you need central services and all the rest of it. So,
Yeah.
all right. So that's what happened on Narkina 5. And yeah, it's not going to be good, at least for the prison officers. What happens next is anybody's guess. And hopefully with this episode coming up in a couple of days, we'll get to see that. All right. So we zip off back to Coruscant. Right, and your favorite room, which I got to see, you get to see the ceiling and everything. It looks absolutely spectacular. So this is after the interrogation of Vix, and Dedra confirms that Vix didn't know Luthen's name, and we knew that she didn't know. So it's kind of handy that she never got to learn it. And at this point, everybody still thinks they're just dealing with one big crime syndicate, stealing bits and pieces from the Imperial yards, right? Then all of a sudden, Hurt comes up, and he's into filling some gaps in Dedra's Sherlock Holmes moment, right? This is one of those classic deduction things. We're going to join this dot with this dot with this dot to get this extra dot. And out of that, Aldani comes up, right? And I like the way they drew the parallels to say, well, hang on, is this to do with the Aldani theft? And, of course, now Partagaz is really interested in what's going on. And, of course, Cassian returned back to Ferrix 3 days after, or 3 nights after the robbery. Sudden wealth. Right, a couple of dudes recognized him from the images at the base, and all of a sudden, well, we're drawing some very interesting, because it's all true. We knew that Cassian was involved with that theft, so the Imperials are now aware of where this is going. And as Partagaz says, if Cassian Andor was involved with the Aldani theft, that is big, big news. And good stuff. And we asked, what happens with Cassian's mother? And it's been covered off. One thing about this show, it's good on details. When an audience members go, what about that? They actually cover it off in the show. Marva is being watched because even as Dedra says, she's old and frail and all the rest of it. So, yes, very good.
So I thought that was fantastic as well, because the Empire aren't being drawn in broad strokes where they're all evil. Like, they're actually smart, where they're like, she's being watched. If he ever comes back, we're going to have someone there. And it really is true. If you took the mother in for interrogation, you just kill her and they get no information at all. The one thing, we've been jumping from storyline to storyline, which I really like about this series. For me, there is no weak part where I go, I hope they get through this part so I can see, the prisoners, or I hope they get through the prisoners. I think it's all being really well written on every level. And I love these scenes as well. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. I'm really dialing into it, because I love the idea of you get to see how it all comes together. And we've seen it from the start, from the very beginning of the series. Remember, Dedra was looking for a Star Path unit. That was it. That's where it all started for her. Right. That's been swiped. She does all the homework with her assistant, Heta, whatever his name is, and all this is just unfolded over a couple of months. Remember, it's a couple of months since the beginning of the series to now, and now she's going places with it, and it's just unraveling in all these different ways, and it's absolutely spectacular. I can't imagine trying to binge watch this entire series in one go. You'd be just going, oh my God, you're feeding my interest and fascination. It's awesome. So,
yes. Well, the other thing about this series is when we've seen criminals in the Star Wars universe, we've always dealing with huts and criminal organizations and bounty hunters and stuff like that. And there's none of that. I think that's fantastic. That's happening somewhere else. It's actually the building up of the rebellion and the start of the rebels that is the criminal element in this, which is a really nice different way to look at the Star Wars universe.
Totally agree with you. So we've been covering off Dedra stuff. We saw what happened with the Bix's stuff. We saw what's going on with the prisoners. And all of a sudden, we get back to good old Cyril, right? Good old plodding on. Good old Cyril the plotter, right? I like it. He's eating the same food. He's got the same clothes. But apparently he's changed his hairstyle and he's been out late recently. And we discover why in a few minutes' time. I thought this was like, good old Cyril. What's he been up to? And Edie, I love this one, has been cleaning out his room again, come across his private box, and I thought, oh yeah, that just sounds dodgy right across the board. And of course, it's all the joys of living at home with mum. Oh, what do you reckon?
This is fantastic. And you know what? She is a typical mum who, even the compliments she gets him are backhanded insults where she's like, you're doing well at this job, not like that other job that you are hopeless, that kind of thing. It would... he is obviously a fastidious and an uptight guy. Living with his mum would just be cranking up the pressure slowly until he's going to pop,
Well, I like this from Tracy. How good is his mother? Well, as it turns out, Edie doesn't give up because she says that, dude, you remember where you were? I've looked after you. I've cooked for you. I've cleaned for you. I've pressed your suits and all the rest of it. And it's like, if it wasn't for me, you'd be in a dire straits. And it's like, mate, tell you what, Mr. Cyril, you're getting some serious home truths whacked into you. And I love that. And I love the fact that he says he's been promoted at work and suddenly Edie loves him. Uncle Harlow will be pleased. Oh, dude, how good is that?
Well, this wasn't my idea, but I've had a couple of people come into the store and talk to me, and they're like, "He's a couple of episodes away of killing her and dressing as her Norman Bates style while she's in the room as a little mummy, and he'll talk to her kind of thing." But you can see how it could go that way really easily.
I got to agree with Daniel here. You're right. Edie's been looking through his private box and she's found his porn collection, his adult book collection. Absolutely. It's like, it's my private box. Don't go in. Oh, dude.
I found the pictures of those.
That?
I found the pictures of those Twi'lek dancers. I can't believe you've got those.
Yeah, and I love it. You are right, Tracy. She actually fills up his cereal bowl, and remember, one falls out, and he picks it up, chucks it back in. Oh, dear. Suddenly
that has got to be improvised on set, hasn't it? That couldn't have been in the script, and it's just a nice little touch.
So after kicking the shit out of the guy, she says, "Oh, you're a cool. I love you. Uncle Harlow will be pleased. You got a promotion. You're back in the good books again." Oh, classic, absolute classic. I love it. Ingenious. And for such a scene, which is so stagnant, they're just talking opposite each other, and then she walks around. It's magic, absolutely magic to watch. All right, so that's what's going on with Cyril. We get to see Cyril again later on, probably one of the best scenes in the entire series. But before then, we're back in the Senate. We're following the Mon Mothma story, right? Once again, now I didn't notice this before. There's actually a light that shines on the pod that's doing the presenting, which I don't think we actually had in the Phantom Menace, but I really liked that. I thought it was kind of cool. And as always, there's nobody in the Senate control box up here. Sly Moore or Massameter. No one's there. No one's running the show, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. So Mon's in there doing her big spiel. She's talking about the PORD thing. And I love the fact that all the senators are switching off their pods. They're going, nah, we're not interested, because clearly, and we actually hear someone call out that they still love the Empire, that there's a lot of support for the current government that they've got. And I thought that was interesting, because it's quite possible that a lot of the senators live on worlds that are prospering under Imperial rule. Not everybody would be having a hard day at the office. And looking at this image, I can't imagine what it'd be for Mon standing there with the Imperial logo just below her. Mate, that'd just be painful. But what it comes down to is not all the senators support what she's saying, even though 5 years from now, none of them will have a job. And I thought it was really interesting.
This, again, was one of my favorite scenes on sort of world building, where you've got the Senate that used to be the peak of, democracy in the galaxy, where half the pods are empty, the lights go out, they turn around and talk among themselves while she's trying to address them. She talks about entire worlds dying and starving, and they boo her for saying that. And then you've got the headless Senate, because there's no one there. No one is it. The Emperor does not even care what they're talking about, because he's got such a tight stranglehold on everything. No one even has to represent him at the Senate anymore.
So it's likely that the senators who are against her are the ones whose worlds, as I said, are prospering under the Imperial rule, because not all of them are getting the jackboot sort of treatment. And as pointed out here, I mean, it would be a hard time for her, because they're clearly not seeing what she can see. And we know what she can see is she's on the right path with it. But maybe for them, the Empire's taken over. Remember, it's been 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe they've flourished. They're going, the world's good for us. And as soon as someone talks against that, and this happens in the real world as well, when everything supposedly is going well, you get one dissident, and he goes, mate, you got no idea what you're on about. You're giving us the shits. You're talking about this thing. You have no idea where you're going with it. You're causing all these ripples. We're not happy about it. As I said, switch the lights off the pods. We'll just talk amongst ourselves and wait until she's disappeared. So I thought that was really interesting, because in the normal Star Wars trope, they'd all be going, yep, vote now. Absolutely, we're on your side, Mon. It's the complete opposite. And that's something I don't think you would have expected before, which I thought was really good.
You did see how the Senate was becoming ineffective during the prequels, because anytime anyone tries to raise anything that's of any importance, you'd get someone objecting. But now no one even bothers to go through the democracy process. They just boo and turn off and turn away and walk off. I did think it was great. She's giving us a speech to the Senate, and you can see senators just talking amongst themselves and on their iPads and stuff like that. I just thought it really must be, just so frustrating trying to do anything that's going to be good for the galaxy, because the Empire are just hampering all of it.
Which is why in 5 years' time, when the Emperor dissolves the Senate, no one's going to give a shit, right? The senators themselves will care because they're out of a job, but most people go, you know what? They're ineffectual, which is effectively what you just said. This is interesting. So she gets in the car. Cloris, the driver, says the cousin's unexpectedly. Who the hell's the cousin? Didn't even know she had a cousin, right? Someone's turned up the cousin, and it's friggin' Val. Now I had a moment, dude. I thought, what? Did not see this coming at all.
No.
Val is Mon's cousin. Oh, dude. I had a gasp even when I was watching the show. It was like, holy shit. What do you reckon?
For me, it was maybe one of those weak plot reveals where you go, oh, everything is too connected up. But then you think, well, that makes sense because both of them are in this together, and that's why they're both in the alliance. And maybe Val even recruited Mon Mothma because she's obviously the more shady out there going one. And what I did find was interesting that, of course, they think she's the cool cousin who Mon's daughter loves, and because obviously she goes out exploring the galaxy and stuff, and Mon Mothma is the one that stays at home and is in the Senate. So I thought the dynamics of this are great as well. But I did not expect it. I think the one thing I said to you before this was, didn't see that one coming.
Threw me off completely. I had a moment when I saw that. Ads has asked about the Senate, if when the Senate was dissolved, would they lose their lives or their jobs? No, they're just their jobs. Yeah, they wouldn't have killed them. They just would have said, it's dissolved. You're out of a job. Clear your desks and away you go. Tracy said Cinta alluded to it, so I was regarding Val being the cousin, so I didn't pick up on that. So, yeah.
I reckon the senators would have just turned up to the Senate one day and there's just chains on the doors and stormtroopers, and they're like, there is no Senate. There is no, go home.
Big ass padlocks. Yeah, you're right. When she said she could play being a rich girl running away from family. Oh, very good. Yeah. Didn't think of that. So well done. And so as it turns out, Val's been an active operative for 6 months now, and of course, I like it. This is like the Cassian Kino thing, right? Where Mon's starting to crack under the pressure, and Val is completely focused as to what she's meant to be doing. I thought that was really, really good. And of course, Val says that Mon took a vow, and I was trying to think: is this from if you see the deleted scenes from Revenge of the Sith, the nuclei, the rebellion is already forming with Mon at the center, and was that the vow that she took? It's like, I vow to ensure that the Empire is destroyed and the Republic comes back. I have no idea. I was just purely putting it out there. So.
I do wonder if it's more of a cultural thing or a coming of age, like when they were talking about how young they get married. It was like maybe they vow at a certain age that they'll do everything to look after their planet and look after democracy, and she's one of the few people that actually is following through with it because she's got integrity.
Yeah, I took it a bit further than that. I actually thought she took a vow to restore the Republic and get rid of the Empire, because in the deleted scene of Revenge of the Sith, Mon, Bale, a few others all get together. I mean, it's on a DVD somewhere. They all get together saying we're not happy with how things have occurred, and that's where the very beginning of the entire rebel movement starts. Tracy made a point of saying it wasn't surprising the fact that Val was Mon's cousin. Well, Tracy, you picked that up better than us two, because we certainly didn't see it, and I was kind of glad for that reveal, because cousin could have been male or female. So I was like, holy shit, Val's the freaking cousin. Who would have guessed it?
The only thing I did say a couple of episodes ago was I knew she'd be a more main character because she got an action figure. And usually when you have an action figure, you're not just in 2 episodes of something. So, but I didn't pick this.
No, I thought it was very, very good. And I like this fact that Perrin asked if Val, she's found herself a husband. And I thought, yeah, about that. So... and of course, Perrin has a dig at Mon about Tay. So once again, he's clearly suspecting something's going on between them, and I thought that was kind of cool because something is going on between them, but not what he thinks
not what
it
he
is.
Thinks, yeah.
So, and sorry, going to say something?
I was going to say a lot of the interesting conversations happened around dining tables. You've seen that with Cassian and his mum. You've seen it with Khan and his mum, and you're seeing it here. And every line in this series you've got to listen to and watch, because there's no throwaway stuff. It all is important to driving the story forward. And this is another great scene.
So going back to what Tracy said about saying that she could play being a rich girl running away, Mon says to Val that she's got to pretend to be a spoiled rich girl. And I said, yeah, just be like Lita, because earlier on Lita says, well, Daddy lets me do whatever I want. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So Lita's still the stuck-up little brat that she is. And yeah, clearly Mon is uncertain of whether things are going to be working. But Val, no, she's on the mission. And you then ask yourself, is Val, and not just her, but people like Cinta as well, are they classed as extremists? And that brings a whole discussion together, remembering from the point of view of the audience and the point of view of the people in universe. And she would be classed as an extremist. Cinta certainly would be. So I don't know. Want something for further discussion and analysing at some point. And of course, you get the significant moment of Mon Mothma. She's all alone. No one to turn to. She's just all on her own. And it's like, oh, that's rough.
Well, up until this series, she's always been a rather singular character who hasn't had a lot of people around her. We certainly don't know what happens with her daughter or her husband, and I do think the husband is gonna cark it at some point because he's so flippant about what's happening. I could imagine him for him maintaining his lifestyle. He betrayed his wife and he gets killed for it. For something like that down the track. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. When she's talking in Return of the Jedi, the way she talks and her inflections come across as someone who's lost a lot and is a very, sad and lonely person because of what's happened. And it might be she just loses her entire family.
Well, that sort of brings back to what Val was saying to her, that she took a vow, and I'm saying it's a vow to be on the rebel side and destroy the Empire. But you're right, it costs her everything. So I reckon she'll lose Perrin one way or another, lose Leader, definitely, and lose her position. She's got to be after A New Hope, and once it's discovered she's part of the Alliance, she's obviously got to go into hiding and whatever else. So, yeah, it's a massive sacrifice. So when you saw that image of her by herself, it's like, yeah, it's not the last time you're going to be like that. You've got to give up a lot to try and get where you are. In the end, it works, right, with the destruction of the Empire, which will be 10 years from now. But that's a long, hard road for someone who was set on this path that they couldn't control what was going on. So, yeah, it's a tough life. With all the money and all the power and all the rest of it, she's not a happy lady, and it's just going to get worse. So we sort of jumped away a bit, then we come back, and then, of course, Tay's on the scene, and Mon is desperate to find $400,000 because of the gap in her funding, right? And she's going to get pinged if she doesn't find a way to hide it. Now, Tay comes up with the idea of finding this dude, Davo. Good old Davo. That sounds like a Davo. Yeah, that sounds like a dodgy name, doesn't it? And I thought she needs the $400,000 to come from somewhere. And I thought straight away, you can see it now. She's going to go off to Luthen and say, "Yeah, the 100 million credits that you swipe from Aldani. Can I get some of it?"
Well, I did think when he's talking about the crime lord, I thought he was going to say Moth Harlow or something, and it was all going to tie in because Cyril Khan's uncle was going to be like a crime lord, but then it wasn't. But I did think that was going to happen when he was talking about, I'm going to introduce you to this. He wants an introduction for the short-term loan or something,
Yeah. And that's where it's going to come down to. She's obviously got massive problems. She needs a financial fix. So she's going to go to Luthen and say, dude, didn't want to take it, but can I borrow some? And that's going to just unravel big time. There's going to be a paper trail somewhere, and they're going to find out what's going on. So, but yeah, you've got a feel for it. I like what Daniel said about it. It'd be fantastic if we saw the point where Mon goes on the run, which will connect this with Rebels. Yeah, well, clearly her world's going to fall apart very, very soon. I like that. Yeah, Davo from the Shonky Mechanics. That's exactly what it is. So, yes, we wait and see. But no, don't be surprised if Luthen makes an appearance next time around. How long has Mon been in exile before Return of the Jedi? I don't know if it's covered off. I don't remember the Rebels episode at all. She's still... By Rogue One, she's already exiled because the Senate's already been dissolved almost around that time. So, I don't know. I'm going to assume a couple of years at least, but that's just pure speculation.
Well, this series, I think, has been confirmed dovetails with Rogue One, or they're going to lead it into Rogue One. So we'll see all of that, and I'm sure we can't guess at the moment what's going to happen. We can have some informed ideas, but the way this series has been written and the way it's going, I'm quite happy for it to unfold and surprise me as it goes along.
Yeah, I would suspect you're going to see Mon's world fall apart because they've clearly set up Leader as the snooty bitch and Perrin as the untrusting husband for a reason, because they're going to turn against her. You can see it sticking out a mile. So that's what's happened with Mon and her saga. that's going on over there. Then all of a sudden we get into what is possibly one of the greatest scenes in the entire series, right? And we did not see this coming a mile away, right? How good is this? Cyril catches up with Dedra when she least expected, right? Now we discovered his promotion was a setup from Dedra, right?
Yeah.
And now she's got a fan. How good is this? And of course, we now realize why he changed his hair or why he's been out late. He's been kind of watching her. It's like, oh, dude.
Well, I did almost think he was going to go in for a kiss. I was like, oh, this is awkward. But do you know what? She likes him, because if she didn't like him for stalking her, she would have him thrown into prison straight away. So she must like him at some level.
I love the fact when she says to him, are you stalking me? And he says, well, no, but I've kind of just been watching you come and go and all this sort of stuff. And he changed his hairstyle for her. He couldn't believe it. And he's staying out late because clearly he's just loitering around the building, and there she's there. And he's finally worked up the guts to go, all right, now that I got the promotion, because prior to this, he clearly didn't have the promotion, but he's been watching her ever since. He goes, all right, now I've got a reason to go up to her and say, thank you for that. And of course, she's not even remotely interested. And I agree with you. She's completely confused, right, as to what the hell's going on. She's about to bolt, and he grabs her by the arm. Is like, "Oh, dude, you're looking for a backhand."
Well, that's when I'm like, when he was doing that and talking, I was like, she must at some level like him, because if you grabbed a security officer or you were stalking a security officer, that's like straight to prison. Like, do not pass go, do not collect $200. And then at the end, I was like, there's actually some tension here. I thought he was going to lean in for a kiss. I was like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. And they didn't. But I did think it was, I agree with you. It was one of the best scenes in the series.
I mean, their connection is clearly their ideology, not necessarily from a physical romantic thing. From him, it probably could be. Absolutely. Right? Because he's just not seen her as just saying, oh, you're an attractive lady, but you've got the same mindset as I have. Therefore, it's a match made in heaven. Imagine the pillow talk we could have together. Where was it? Tracy said she didn't hate it. Yeah, I agree. Maybe from her perspective, it's the first time she's had an admirer, but he oversteps the boundaries, clearly. I mean, there are ways of doing it. He's just screwed himself. But he says, you see the same thing, that you've got what I want. We want the same thing together. But his methodology hasn't worked. I'm just going to wind back a little bit. Mon was on the run in season 3, episode 8 of Rebels, episode Secret Cargo. She's on the run. That's probably 2 years after this, as a guess. Okay, so there you go. I love it. And of course, she just leaves him. And I thought, okay, hell hath no fury than a Cyril scorned. And you do wonder, what is he going to do now? Is he going to go and try and find Cassian on his own just to impress her? Because clearly she is pushing buttons in him, and whether he is pushing buttons in her, she's clearly not letting on. But I certainly don't think that he made a very good impression. But from his perspective, seeing her up close again and being able to talk to her, I reckon he's what do you call it, the hormones or whatever, just would have been going nuts. So
when she says to him, "Never ever do this again," he's coming back again at some point.
Yeah, and I agree with Adsy. Yeah, sooner or later she's going to turn to him. So you get to see her walk into the office, right? And she's having a bit of takes the hat off. It's like, oh my God. But yeah, dealing with a fanboy, I mean, of all things. So we then learn that there's a pilot has been held near something called Stairguard, and Gorst, good old Dr. Gorst, is on his way. And I love the fact that she said she's going to interrogate him, interview him remotely via Zoom or something like that. How good's that? You can actually interrogate people across the airwaves. How good's that? I mean, is it going to be like the Big Bang Theory where they have like the screen on the robot and it just rolls around and it's just her head?
Well, you can just imagine the fun they could have in the security center where you don't like one of your relatives, so you leave an answering machine message and it's just the squeaking of children that will send you insane. So,
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, so we're getting some important stuff here, right? Now, it's a lot of words, a lot of dialogue, but it's all relevant, right? So they've said a raid is being planned at the power station at Spellhouse. Now, this was covered off in the discussion between Luthen and Saw in the last episode, right? Luthen was trying to recruit somebody from Saw's group, to Anto Krieger, I think it was, for those guys to meet up to do this job, okay? And as it turns out, we've got another reference to Kafrine, which is a reference to Rogue One, which I thought was kind of cool. Nice little gag there. And, of course, we're doing a direct echoes of A New Hope, making a staged attack on a ship look like an accident. And once again, Partagaz is impressed with Dedra. And before I move on, anything you want to say about that before I get to the last thing I
No,
wanted to say. I've got my slides slightly out of order. Sorry about that. You go on.
again, I just think Tracy's right, where she likes being the security golden girl at the moment, where like they're listening to her and she's, um, pretty much she's a voice that they actually take notice of and take her opinion. So it's just a little important scene.
And it is important because the Spell House attack, and I should have had this a few slides earlier, is going to be foiled, right? Because our guys, these guys, know that it's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? And the operatives are going to be questioned. Now, Anto Krieger, who we haven't met yet, knows Luthen, right? And as I said, that harks back to the Saw Gerrera Luthen talk from last week. So, because Anto was supposed to meet with Saw said, "No, stick him. We don't want to know the guy. He's an ox." And so, whether we get to see that attack or not, it'd be interesting to see because we haven't met any of these characters yet. And if they get these people and say, "Oh, there's this dude called Luthen," that means our guys, Dead or Alive guys, are going to learn that Axis is Luthen, and they're going to trace him back to the shop, and then work out who the customers are. Mon Mothma's one of the customers. And you got Claire and all the rest of it, and you go, "Oh yeah, it'll all just unravel before our very eyes." But I think that was an interesting moment where they've gotten very quickly onto what's going on. Quickly stage this thing, right? Kill the pilot, stick him in the ship, sail it off to Kafrene, right? Make sure Anto Krieger gets it, and off we go. Oh, how good was that, dude? What do you reckon?
Yeah. Lots of stuff setting up for the next episode. Hard to believe there's only 3 episodes left. There's a lot to cover off.
It is going to finish on a massive cliffhanger. And speaking of cliffhangers, that's actually, believe it or not, finally got through the end of my slides. Christy, can you give me your crimson yawns, please? And remember, the more yawns it is, the worse it is. Sorry, and the less yawns, the better it is. So if you can give that, that'd be fantastic. Awesome. There's a lot going on. Once again, a lot of it is talking. There's a lot of talking and a dude dying, which is unfortunate. Bix is busted in the head. It is just not going well. What do you reckon, dude?
I know it's an episode which is a lot of, I guess, exposition and stuff happening as the plot moves on, but for dialogue and dynamics and setups, it doesn't get much better than this. You've got basically 3 different stories that they're progressing at the same time, and all of them have been addressed and all of them get enough time and all of them are interesting. So for me, it might surprise you. I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. I really loved it.
Excellent. Now, this is an interesting one. Now, so Christy has given us her yawns, and she said 4 yawns. That is a 6 out of 10. That is the highest rating I think Christy has given the show. Now, Christy's made it very clear she's not a fan of Andor. It's a little bit too un-Star Wars-like in a lot of ways. But to her credit, she stuck with it and kept watching. And this is the first time we've gone past 5. I think her best rating has been 5 yawns. I know it's a kind of a cockeyed system that we have in this show, but the less yawns, the better it is. So that's a 6 out of 10 for Christy. So well done. It's obviously maybe something is now starting to push your buttons, even though, as we said, the interrogation sequence wasn't very nice. The fact that put it all off, carked it, Mon stressing out to the max, but Dedra, the bad guys, are actually winning the war, so to speak. For myself, I'm in the same boat as you. Now, for those watching this show, Aaron and I don't discuss the episode in advance, aside from the fact that the Vel cousin thing, we were just talking about that on Saturdays, like, oh my God, who knew that was coming? We're on the same path. I am pushing for a 9 on this one. I'd go to 10, but I'm just going to leave myself a little bit of breathing space. But I loved it. I was really dialed into it. And I watched these late on Wednesday nights. I put headphones on and I just fell into it completely. And I was very, very impressed with everybody. The whole thing is excellent. Even as was mentioned earlier by Tracy, even Cyril's mum, Edie, it's the least like character development in the show. She's fantastic. She's just awesome. So even the small characters are written that well. I absolutely loved it. So very, very cool.
I just think what it is, it's a change of gears for a Star Wars show. And there are a lot of people I know who are not enjoying it and thinking it's slow and saying nothing's happening. And that's absolutely fine if you love lightsabers and blasters. And I do understand that point of view. But for me, I'm really glad that the galaxy far, far away has enough room for a show like this.
Yeah, as it turned out, we came across a guy on Saturday who said he didn't like it. It's just not exciting enough. And I said, well, if that's the case, just go watch Mandalorian. Tracy has said there's some predictability. I wouldn't think there's much of it. I mean, obviously the old guy was going to die, and there's probably a couple other things. But so well delivered. That was one of my favorite episodes. Yeah, it is going places. Chrissy said, how they balance the multiple lines on the cinematography. The cinematography is fantastic. It's like cinematic quality. I mean, it's just absolutely magnificent. They must spend ages working at all their lenses and their positioning and the depth of focus and the depth of field. Oh, just awesome. Colin agrees it was a brilliant episode. I think it was just worth it purely for the Cyril Dedra conversation. I thought it was just her reaction. She's just moving back and forward.
Well, it started
invading the personal space. I absolutely loved it.
It started on a high with the torture scene, and it had like little highs all through it. And the sound design is amazing as well. That's something you've got to mention. The music and the sound design on all of the episodes have been stunning.
Yeah, as we've discussed, the opening theme is always different for every episode, and it was different for this one too. So, yeah, and you're right. The entire interrogation sequence went a completely different way what we thought. You know, in New Hope it'd be a mind probe, a droid. No, it's a smiling dude. He comes along. He says, "Oh, by the way, we killed some kids. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Their sounds are awesome. Here's some headphones. Have a listen to what they were doing when they were carking it. It'll do you one." Oh. So that's just creepy in itself, rather than some big hulking dude. Oh yeah, love it.
Well, the other thing you've got to think about, which I've just thought, what were they doing that they were screaming when they were dying? Because if they planetary bomb them, they're gone. They had to be in there flame throwing them or something to make them all be screaming and in agony as they died.
Yeah, but you got to remember, they're aliens. We don't necessarily know how their physiology worked, and we didn't necessarily planet bomb. They could have just gone through. I mean, there's a whole different. Even the guy wasn't prepared. Gorse wasn't prepared to say what went through the details, right? Yeah. So maybe that even heat that turned him off as well. So depending on their physiology, it could have been anything. For all we know, the aliens may have just been like the size of a pen, right? And they just stand. I don't know. So I don't know.
What we find out
very cool.
is Babu Frick is the only one that escaped the planet.
Exactly right. Well, you never know. That's the thing. We just assume that the size of human beings. Uncle Harlow, yeah, we still don't know about him. His presence will be influential, and he's obviously a lot happy now that Cyril's been promoted. So that was an interesting thing. So Cyril did the right thing by the ISB, and as Dedra said, we just did it to shut you up, give you a promotion, kick you upstairs. Imagine they put a phone call to his boss, promote him, done, hang up. And he just goes, all right, up you go. So does that mean he gets a bigger cubicle or he's on a higher level or whatever? So, yes. Regarding Uncle Harlow, he does get mentioned a bit, and that's what's so cool about it, right? Edie reckons he's the greatest thing walking the Coruscant. But it's like, who is this dude?
What would be really hilarious if he doesn't even appear in the series? He was just someone they talk about in the background.
Yep, totally agree with you. It's just fantastic. Just this name dropping of this dude who apparently is some major guy, and we don't know who he is. Absolutely fantastic. No, it was an outstandingly good show. Outstandingly good episode, and I think if there are people out there who aren't enjoying it, it's actually that's unfortunate for them, because they are definitely missing something very, very special. It is time for us to finish up. Episode 10 comes out in a couple of days' time, which is going to be awesome. Don't forget, those who are watching the show, if you haven't done so already, check out the Sci-Fi Zone socials, because there are other shows on besides this one, and we're doing some very interesting and cool stuff. And of course, we're heading towards the end of the year, so which is pretty groovy. And of course, if you can't go to the Galactic Antiquities and Objects of Interest, go to Aaron's store instead.
We have stuff that's just as expensive, and I accept Republic credits. So, always buying, always selling, always chatting. So come in anytime and say hi.
One time you'll accept Republic credits, but not necessarily Imperial credits. I love it. Very, very good. All right, so that's the end of it for us, and I think there's nothing more to say, but yes, roll on
the
episode 10.
The episodes are so good, we talk about them for 20 minutes longer than the actual episode goes for.
I tell you what, there's a lot more we could discuss. That's just you and I discussing. If there was a group of people, you could sit there and you could tell that you could spend 3 or 4 hours ripping this thing apart. And of course, there were things that we just covered over very quickly, and some of the speculation and the thoughts. And I'll have to go back and rewatch the episode again to work out what happened between level 4 and level 2. But either way, it didn't end well for the guys on level 2. They all got shish kebabbed, and not shish kebab, what do you call it? Electrocuted. That's going to be, who gets a job of cleaning that up? So,
Oh, for a pair of shoes.
Indeed, he did. Or it could have been a pair of gloves from episode 1. Remember, as you said, the Chekhov's gun. Very good. All right, we'll leave it to it, everybody. Have a good one, and we will see you next Monday to talk about episode 10. Okay, bye for now.
Good night, guys.